Hi, I'm Minchao, and this is Team 4. And today we're going to talk about the object detection using histogram of oriented integrations. So first, I will give you a small introduction of object detection. And John is going to talk about the HLG algorithm. And Khan is going to talk about the classifications using certain classifiers. And last one, Josh, is going to talk about the model generation for object detection. So, object detection. Object detection is basically a technology that would obtain the representations and features from a whole bunch of different images and compare it to the other image. So it comes up with the questions like, how do we choose the proper representations of the image? And the answer is really depend on like what kind of object you're going to detect. So for instance, if there's an object that has a really unique shape, so you might want to use like shape descriptors or the edge detection to compute its shape and use that to compare to the other object. And also sometimes you might want to use like 2 or even more different type of descriptors just for compute one object, because one specific representation of an object, it might be like similar to the other object. So you want to make sure like when this case happening, you can still have the other type of representation of that object as a backup. So the image on the bottom just kind of gives you an idea like how to use like 2 different type of descriptors to detect the object. So on the first one, the top one, the black and white one, is using the shape descriptors to detect the shape, and the bottom one is using a color descriptor to detect the color. So and it also depends on how you're gonna represent your object. So the object detection could be divided into like 2 different categories. And the first one is global representation, and the second one local representations. So for the first one, global representations, just like what it sounds like, you will capture the information content or the features of the whole image. So the feature in this case could be like histograms, shape, textures, or eigenspace of the image. And the good thing about using this is that it can be used to like regenerate the original image, because the data of this method, like it contains like a global structure of the whole image. And for the disadvantage, it is sometimes really sensitive to occlusions and clutters. So what does it mean? Like it's like if there's a clutter or noise in the image, it might be really hard to do the computation for your representations. And it also requires a segmentation when you are doing your computation too. And for the local representations, instead of using the whole image, you will only like extract a single point or a small region from the image you have. And you will compute its representation only within that region. So the representation in this case, it has to be invariant to light, noise, scale change, and fluid directions. Because the region you have from one image, it might be located at anywhere on the other image, and also maybe in different orientation as well. So when this case happening, you want to make sure like the region you have could still be detectable on the object to that kind of image. So the good thing about using this method is that it has extended robustness and also be able to capture small size features. And for the disadvantage, it's sometimes really hard to recognize its precisely locations and orientations for the region you have. And the bottom image just kind of show like how this idea will work. So on the middle part of the image, there are 5 different regions which were collected from this size of the image. And they use those 5 regions to compare to the image on the other side. So as you can see here, it's like two regions are failed because of different orientations and maybe clutters in an image, but it can still be recovered like from the other three and make the object still be detectable in an image. So.
All right, John Buther, I'm going to talk about what we're actually working with in our project. And so we're doing a global detection, and it's a pipeline system, and basically the signals we have coming in are vertical sync, horizontal sync, red, blue, and green. And so these are just regular 1-bit signals or 8-bit signals in the case of the colors. And it all has to be pipelined so that, well, this is the way that the demonstration project that we have is laid out, and said make a block for this project. And the way you can operate on more than one pixel, and the way you can make the whole thing work is by using pipes, buffers, delays, and counters. So step one of computing a histogram of gradients is computing the gradients. And you find the direction and magnitude of each gradient in each pixel, and then you store it somewhere. And so we're doing this by taking red, blue, and green, turning it into gray, putting it in a 3-line buffer because we only get 1 pixel at a time. So you have to have the pixel above and below to compute the Y gradient. And because the line goes across like this in a video stream, we need this 3-line buffer so that we have 3 lines and access to all 3 lines, so we can do the top pixel minus the bottom pixel. Once we have the gradients for each pixel, we compute the histogram for a cell. And so each one of these, there's going to be 2-dimensional data for X and Y gradients. And basically to compute the descriptor for a cell, we compute each one of these X and Y to sort of a polar coordinate system, R theta. And then we use the R for the magnitude, and we add those all together. And we add them up in an array of 9, for, in our case, 9 long. And we use the orientation as the index into the array. And then we sort of end up with something like this. Step 3 is normalizing, and we do this to account for differences in light or illumination and such. The way we do this is we take the normal of a large area of the picture, and then we basically divide the individual cell by this value. And so an L1 normal is the easiest, which is just, instead of, as you're probably familiar with, sort of vector squared square root, that's an L2 normal. An L1 normal is just adding them all up together and basically dividing by them. And so then we get this new histogram that's normalized to the localized area. And so like, over here, if you were to take the surrounding cells here, you'd be normalizing the center. And so the last step is putting it all into an SVM classifier, which is essentially a giant dot product. And so if this was our support vector machine values, and this was our normalized gradient, you basically take each one of these would represent a value for a different orientation, and multiply it by these, and then you add them all together, and then you check if it's greater than 0.
So we did our, my name is Khan. So I'm going to talk about a little bit about the classifier. So basically we have Hulk, and we calculate the gradient of the gradients or the orientation of the graph or the object we're going to detect. But the main goal of object detection is all about class. So what I mean by class, so in our case, we did a Hulk on an image or on a moving object or anything come up. We want to see if it's a car or it's not a car, or if it's a pedestrian or not. So this is where class comes in. So basically we have to build a classifier saying this. So by giving it a database, say like 1,000 of pedestrian image, 1,000 of car image, and we use this algorithm called support vector machine to be able to determine to determine which class does it belongs to. So basically, it is a yes or no thing. So basically, you put the image into a support vector machine, and it'll give you is either a car or not. So how does a support vector machine works? It uses a hyperplane. What a hyperplane is, as we can see here, a hyperplane is a plane that in between of two different images or two different classes, and it's going to be the line and separates the two classes the most. Like saying, in this case, it would be the red line because it has the furthest distance from each class, which that's why it always is also called a maximum margin classifier. And on the other hand, so to be able to easier to use this, so we can write a function into our training data. So basically, the way people do it is, if we have a line here, I can roll the box around it. The line is going to be in the middle. If I can roll the function that calculates the maximum width, which is W, we can know where the hyperplane is going to be at. So in that case, basically we take our trained data, like saying we have 100 times 100 pixel data. So we put them all into a data set, and then we tell the computer is what class it belongs to, and so the computer will take the data of each pixel. In our case, we take the whole data of the gradient or orientation of each pixel. So the computer will know by compare and learning, it will know when we put a new image into it what kind of object it is. Okay. So maybe the question is, maybe you're wondering why we use SVM, or with not some other classifier go with Hope. Well, the thing is, support vector machine is really easy to train, and it's been really successful to model complex real-world problems. It won't go accurate on the text and image classification as long as you give it the right database. And it also performs well on data sets that have multiple attributes. So which means, like for car, you have a different characteristics. So that's why a support vector machine is a good thing to use to be able to do Hope. And the other thing is, it's really built into the library of MATLAB, and lots of people have been using it. So we have a lot of previous data to be used for. And I think Josh is going to talk about it.